Sairam, dear Dr. Pal Dhall,
Dhairam,
thank you
Dhairam.
so much. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time to have conversation with us, to share your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions on how to adopt human values in our day-to-day life. Devotees like me have a lot of opportunities to remember and easily apply the concept of human values when we are among Sai devotees. But once we step out into the world, the fellow human beings we interact with, either professionally or personally, are so different that a need arises to consciously apply the inherent human values in every moment of our life. Devotees like listening to this chat session would be able to understand and have action plans to apply these human values in their day-to-day activities. Our day-to-day activities could be as simple as how to control our anger when someone honks at you and overtakes you on the highway, how to handle a grown-up young adult, a very demanding and workaholic boss, or a social crisis that is prevalent in our society, just to name a few. As Swami says, our life is his message. How do we live up to his expectations? This is part of the series of chat sessions we would be having, which we named it as Journey from Unconscious to Conscious Living, through which we would like to listen from many experienced devotees like you to elevate ourselves. The theme we have chosen today to discuss with you, sir, is on the current crisis that the whole world is going through, which is the COVID pandemic. I hope and pray, Swami, that we are almost done with this pandemic as I speak to you. Now, without wasting much time, we would like to hear from you. So I would like to start with the first question. Bhagavan has emphasized family as a training ground of human values. What have we learned about human values from the impact of the pandemic on family functioning? We would like to hear from you.
Sairam, Sainath, you have raised a very important question. The question of being constantly aware of values grounded in who I am. And that is the heart of spirituality, is to be able to stay in a frame of mind, in a state of heart that is continuously connected with divinity. So human values are nothing more and nothing less than the expression of divinity in our everyday life. So the challenges that you are highlighting is the challenge of integrating spirituality into daily moment-to-moment living. And I think that this is easy to talk about, very difficult to practice. You see, we are all aware of teachings, the wisdom traditions. We are all aware of the value of having continuous contact with the divine. But question is, how authentic is it? How solid is it? How stable is it? So we can't be like a leaf that flutters with every wind. Question is how grounded we are in our spiritual life. And that requires practice. And we can address that later on. But the question that you've asked now is that family is the training ground of human values. And how has that been impacted by the pandemic? And you are hoping that the pandemic has come to an end. But let me tell you, pandemic has not come to an end. It has only become endemic. And that means that we need to have a prepared mind and a prepared body and a prepared heart. You know, whenever there are crises, and COVID is just a massive crisis at a planetary level. But in a moment-to-moment living, there are crises that we face every day. You said, you know, somebody overtakes you and honks the car, or when we feel the blood rise in our head because we are feeling angry, right? Or we feel frustrated about situations. These are in a way tests. Now, COVID is a time of moral reckoning and of reflection, because COVID has tested our deeply held beliefs and values. It has tested our faith, and it has tested our moral characters. So now I'll turn to the family. You know, family functioning is based on the operational aspect of human values. When we talk about human values, we talk about a concept. We talk about character trait. Human values are a character trait. Goodness is a character trait. But goodness is also an academic, cognitive kind of understanding. Operationalizing goodness is something different. You know, in our literature, we say jnana and vijnana. Jnana is something that we learn on the scriptures. It is at an intellectual level. But vijnana is putting it into practice in everyday life, moment to moment. So family function is based on human values, the operational aspect of human values. And let me just clarify that a little bit, because we have developed that very fully in our book, The Heart of Dynamic Parenting, Human Values. Love in the family is equivalent to the strength of the spouse bond, the love between husband and wife, and how they are operationalizing that love moment to moment. Right conduct is empowerment of the spouse and empowerment of the children. Right conduct is given as disciplinary behavior, if you like, self-regulation and co-regulation. Peace is how we function in the family to generate peace. Swami says peace can't be got from outside. Peace is something that we generate through our interactions in the family. That means family time. How much value do we put on individual member and on generating peace? And nonviolence is nothing more than the way we communicate. Swami has said that, you know, where the animals have the claws and the horns and the teeth and the fangs, human beings have the soft tongue. And the soft tongue can inflict injuries that are very deep and very long-lasting. So the family functioning is based on human values. In fact, all our interactions are based on the operationalizing of human values, on the operations of human values. Now, COVID has produced a lot of stress in the family for various reasons, and we can discuss that in full. But it's a question of how the family is responding to these stresses. Now, we say that in the social literature, the family can be divided into three types of families: healthy family, mid-ranging family, and unhealthy family. Healthy family is one, if you take a look at the literature that is secular literature, is the one where the operationalizing of the human values is optimal. Mid-ranging family is the one where it is good but not optimal. And unhealthy family is one where the human values are not being practiced at all or very little. So what was the nature of the family functioning before COVID is what would be exaggerated as a result of the stresses and the limitations that are imposed on the family as a result of isolation, fear, stress, financial stress, emotional stress, functioning together under one roof, unused, unaccustomed type of behavior where we have to live moment to moment, 24 hours locked up with the family members who ordinarily would have gone out to work or go to school and so on. So it exaggerates whatever was the nature of the human values operations in the family, it exaggerates. So in the healthy family, the parents became responsible for not only children's time and entertainment, but also for their education, and also for creating a loving environment in a closed space. In an unhealthy family, the stress is multiplied. So there is increased suicide, there is increased family violence, increased alcoholism, and all that sort of stuff. So it depends upon what was the nature of the family before and how vulnerable it was to all these stresses, which resulted in the compounding of unhealthy dynamics. But I think we believe that we are a healthy family, or at least mid-ranging family, right? In that case, it has called for greater understanding, for more acceptance, for more patience, for more forgiveness, for more understanding. and of leading to creativity, how to manage our time together, and how we have discovered the value in each member. So Bhagavan has emphasized family is a training ground, and I would say COVID has really thrown that into relief because of the pressures of the family. How good have we been in our human values practice? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. And especially, I like the explanation of Jnana and Vignan. You said Jnana is just a knowledge, theory, whereas Vignan is implementation of the knowledge in our day-to-day life. That's wonderful. And you also responded how family is responding. Depends on how they were before COVID and after COVID. That leads me to the next question of, okay, this is family. How about myself? Self-care. What are the lessons about self-care and healthy living, and how do we manage stress?
Okay. At an individual level, COVID has raised the question for each one of us, to ask ourselves, what is my relationship to myself? What is my relationship to not only small s, but also the large s? My Atma, my spirit. What is my relationship to that? Now, that goes into a question of what is wellness. Wellness has got two pillars. There are two pillars of wellness: self-love and self-discipline. Self-love is not self-indulgence. Self-love is valuing our body, valuing our mind, valuing our heart, and living in a state where we are living an optimal life. So when I say managing my body, I mean, what kind of diet do I eat? Do I eat fresh organic foods, or do I eat junk food? All the ahara, everything that I take in through my, not just the mouth, through my eyes, through my ears, through my nose, through my taste buds, and through my skin, right? Through my feelings. So what is it that I am doing at that level, at a physical level, at a mental level, at an emotional level, at a social level, and at a spiritual level? So how are we responding in relationship to COVID is, what is the level of my self-care? How much regulation do I have on my mental and emotional energy? And what am I doing to get into optimal wellness? Wellness is a continuum between illness, disability, and death, and optimal functioning on the other hand. It's a continuum. We choose to go towards wellness or towards disease by the choices we make in our moment-to-moment living, the management of our physical body. Do we love this wonderful, this amazing body? As a medical man, the study of anatomy and physiology created the most amazing, awe-aspiring feelings in me at the perfection that human beings are. Not just the human being, the trees, the flies, the mosquitoes, the ants. There is so much perfection everywhere in the creation. Okay, but coming to self-care, how much do I care about my physical body, my mental and emotional health, my social health, and my spiritual health? Because these are really the wealth that we carry with us. The money is not the money and buildings that we may have is not the real wealth. The real wealth is what is inside here. How am I connected with myself, and how much do I take care of myself? So COVID has thrown that into question because of the limitations, because we were confined, because we were worried. Were we getting adequate sleep? Were we getting adequate nourishment? Were we going and doing exercise? Were we feeling free of anxiety and pain and drama that was all around us? Death and disease everywhere. The question that was asked was, how do I relate with myself? How much anxiety do I take in? How much exercise? We are personally very fortunate in Canberra because it's a very garden kind of city. And we are even more fortunate because we live on a 4-acre land and we could go out and walk on our own land without having to interact with people. But I think that COVID has shown that people need to take self-care, because our resilience, our mental resilience, our physical resilience, our emotional resilience our spiritual resilience depends upon how we live moment to moment, the choices that we make.
So you mentioned about need to take self-care. I think that's one thing beautifully you said. And wellness, it's the real wealth is, we always think that is only physical or emotional, but you are also highlighting about social and spiritual. That's very good, sir. But then again, when you were talking about the managing stress, the pandemic brought us a lot of stress, because we were locked up in the house. We couldn't go to the office, we couldn't interact, we couldn't. And so doctors, whenever we want, they said, okay, come online and then do the interaction. So it was not like, you physically one to one, you face the doctor or you face our colleagues in our office, professional office. It was not like that. So what is human value perspective on the use of technology during the pandemic?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, because technology is like a knife. In the hand of a murderer, it can be used to kill. In the hand of a surgeon, it can be used to heal. So technology has got no other value than the value that we give it, right? How do I use technology? Do I use technology responsibly, or do I abuse technology, or do I use it irresponsibly? What COVID has shown is the responsible use of technology. When we are isolated from our near and dear, our relatives, even in the same city or even the same suburb, even across the street, then how do we as social beings enter into social relationship? Without the technology, we would have been totally isolated and completely in dark what was happening to our relatives, what was happening to our friends, what was happening to our dear ones, what was happening even in the bhajans, in the Sai center, we would not be able to attend. So we'd be locked up in a very negative, isolated world. So technology gave us the capacity to overcome that oceans and distance and time. We could connect with people. We could connect with our relatives. We could share our concerns. We could find reassurance that our relatives are okay. Or if they were sick, we could express our sympathy and our prayers. We could undertake some kind of an action. You mentioned even consultations were on the yeah. Now, even medical consultations. But I'll tell you what, this pandemic led to the greatest innovation in medicine. There's the telemedicine, that's one part, but also all the vaccinations that were generated. We were able to fast track a vaccination generation program all around the world. And the technology enabled different laboratories to connect with each other and to be able to analyze the results of vaccinations and to see what was effective, what were side effects, and so on. Technology has come here to stay. It's a question of how do we use it? Now we can use it. Technology can be used in great way. We can connect as a community. Technology enabled us during this retreat to connect with all the wisdom tradition. Everything is there online. The Holy Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, all the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bible, you name it. It is online. And we can connect with that, and it allowed us to do that. People talking, giving important seminars, we were able to hook into that and get, understanding of deep understanding of our own spirituality. So technology during pandemic has given a new perspective, how to connect communities around the world, how to become one world, how to work together to face a massive adverse event which is global. That is a tremendous step forwards in our oneness, if you like.
I think you have coined a beautiful new word. We used to say technology, but you mentioned is responsible use of technology.
Yeah.
You're right. I think that, sorry, go ahead, sir.
I think it calls into the human value of right conduct or discrimination, if you like. So we need to become very discriminating on how we use some of the facilities that we have. We can waste our time, sure. We can indulge ourselves and look at all the garbage that is on the net as well. Yeah. But do we connect with the elevated aspect of it, the spirituality, the teaching that is available, our sense of community, connecting with our Sai devotees or our friends and relatives? Yeah, it depends on how we, discrimination.
So we were still connected, and especially interestingly, you said there was a lot of innovations in medicines. So the technology has brought in a really a lot of advantages during this pandemic, and it has made our life little easier. We were still able to connect. We were, again, you used the word how we were all together, the whole world. That is what you talked about, oneness. But if I remember right, Bhagavan has also put great emphasis in his divine discourses and teachings about the oneness principle. So what has humanity learned about oneness principle from the experience of COVID?
Okay, I think when we faced a common threat to the planet, it united us together. The very fact united us together. There are adverse things like poverty, but it doesn't unite, because poverty is something that is generated by our commercial system. But here is a threat that is threatening the whole of humanity. And that gives us a message how we may live in the future. How we may live in oneness in the future. We can utilize the experience of COVID to have a quantum leap in our consciousness as one world that works together to sort out the difficulties, that cultivates what is called post-traumatic resilience. We are all in that phase now. We were severely traumatized, and we are now gaining from that experience. In other words, when there is a future pandemic, then we are better prepared. We know what to do. So this is a very important lesson in terms of uniting humanity into one response. So the oneness principle means oneness in everything. God did not divide the planet into countries and races and religions and so on. God didn't do that. It's the human beings who have done that, right? Our spirituality is the common fundamental denominator of this universe. Not of humanity, of this universe. Everything is divine. Trees are divine, stones are divine, sand is divine, leaves are divine, flowers are divine, you are divine, I am divine, everything is divine, right? And everything is that oneness principle. So we experienced during this pandemic the interruption of supply chains, right? Because we are interdependent. It's through this thing, oneness principle with interdependence. We learned that our travel and our education is also universal. Oceans and distances do not protect us against a global event. Previous events, adverse events, there is an earthquake, or there is a flood, there is some kind of a catastrophic happening in some country. We may be very sympathetic, but it does not lead to a oneness in the same way. We may donate money, we may even go there as medical people and help people, but it does not unite the consciousness into oneness. The only other thing that I can think of is when people went to the moon and looked at the world as a blue planet of oneness, that at least at a global level, that was an idea of oneness. But I'm talking about Swami's teachings which is universal oneness, oneness that is an expression of divinity, where an Nirguna Brahma takes a form, the God without form takes a form, and that we have to develop the capacity to be able to see beyond the form. That is our human challenge. That's our human spiritual challenge, if you like. So, in a sense, I would briefly say that what COVID has shown is the limits of our modernity. It has shown that in the face of uncertainty, death, loss, grief, pain, isolation, we can become united as one. So whereas there is an immense possibility in humanity, the fragility in the human being, the anxiety that it provokes and so on, also gives a message of oneness principle.
So what you said is about regarding the oneness, the COVID taught us that we can come together. There was oneness. Maybe the pandemic has taught us that we can still, realize that we can be of oneness among the whole world, and all of us can be living together. But still, you were saying that there was a lot of death, pain, lack of trust. So all these were also there during the pandemic. So how do we deal with that? Sometimes the negative emotions and lack of trust that we could have developed at the tail end of the pandemic from the human value perspective. How do we deal with this negative emotions and lack of
Okay.
trust?
Negative emotions are symptomatic. They are a symptom.
Okay.
They're a symptom of the state of our mind. Right? An event does not have negativity in it. Good or bad event does not have negativity or positivity in it. It is our interpretation, it's the story we create around it that gives it either positive or negative connotation. Right? So when we say negativity, as I understand it, it is a symptom. It's a symptom of where I am in my inner world. Anxiety is a symptom of my incapacity to deal with my strong emotions of fear. Sadness is where I am not able to keep myself in a joyous frame of mind, trusting in the divine. Anger is where my ego gets flared up, and it's a signal to me that I need to watch my ego. Frustration is an indication that I don't have enough patience. So these are symptoms. Negative emotions are symptoms. And normally we dwell in negativity. And that is because in our past, karmic maybe, this life trauma maybe, experience maybe, we are grounded in interpreting things in a very narrow way, clustered around our ego. And we tend to look at everything in negative light. We tend to. We don't have to, but we tend to. And our spirituality is an integration of divine principles, divine joy, divine happiness into moment-to-moment living, so that we are managing negativity informed by trust, love, generosity, kindness, appreciation. So that we can then manage our negative emotions in the light of the divine nature. See, there are psychological theories about negative emotions and positive emotions. Broaden and positive emotions broaden our understanding. They create a restful state in us. It has been shown, for example, by the Heart Math Institute, that when we are appreciating someone, when we are empathetic to someone, we have a better understanding, we have a better control over the brain, because the heart controls actually the brain, not the other way around. That we can think more clearly, we can think more positively. So we have to cultivate the positive emotions. So I think how to deal with the negative emotions and lack of trust is to cultivate positive emotions and positive thinking. Not in a superficial way, but in a deeper way, from a deeper understanding of the nature of humanity, the nature of our humanness, the nature of our human values, the nature of divinity.
Thank you, sir. That means cultivate more positive thoughts when the negative thoughts come up. That's how we can overcome the negativity. But again, the negativity was more prominent in certain areas and certain group of people. For example, there were high mortality of COVID in the poor citizens, the vulnerable, and the elderly. So, what is the human values lesson is there when we look at the high mortality of COVID in the poor citizens, vulnerable, and the elderly?
You know, they say that the quality of a nation is determined by the care it gives to the vulnerable members of the community. You know, a nation that does not look after the vulnerable members, that is the elderly, the young, the single parents, the diseased people in the hospital and so on, if they can't take care of that, that's not a good state. That's not a good community. That's not a good nation. We are one. And are we able to extend ourselves to those who are not in a capacity to be well? You know, so poverty is something that has been created by the economic system. International poverty has been created by the economic system. If you take a look at United States, I may be forgiven if my statistics are not quite right, but about 6 families control the wealth in United States of 140 or maybe 150 million people. That is the disparity of distribution of wealth. The distribution of wealth is so that we are living, you know, they call it an ecological footprint. How much resources do I consume? In United States and in Australia, we have a level of 9 footprints. Sustainability can only be attained if there is a footprint of 1. Sri Lanka currently is on a footprint of 1. India is on a footprint of 1. So there is so much disparity, you know, and then we see on the media, you know, in every country, I'm not talking about United States, every country, the media shows the rich people with their opulent living, swimming pools, great homes, many cars, servants everywhere. And even the poor aspire to that. Even the unemployed aspire to that. Right? So it creates a need. It creates, you know, to some extent, the violence that we see around the fanaticism we see around the world is exactly from that. You know, deprivation on the one hand and extreme opulence on the other. One set of people dying from starvation, other people dying from overnutrition. You know, from coronary artery disease and cancers because of the food that they eat. Now, I think the message in it, the human values message in it is this: to the economic system, that we need to evolve a post-pandemic economic system that is sustainable, so that the colored people, the blacks and the Hispanics in the United States are not shunned as not non-human, and that we are not treating African states or Bangladesh and so on as poor nations who can't even look after their own citizens. We need to, as an economic system, create a forum that enables human dignity everywhere, equality everywhere. You know, so that's the message. Whether we are able to do it or not, whether we will be able to do it or not, I don't know. But I think time will tell that it'll have to happen. It will have to happen. There is actually no choice.
So you mentioned about media, how they were depicting the disparity and all that. So let me ask you this question: how has COVID affected our trust in media?
You know, trust is something that we have to take a look at where we place it. we have to use discrimination in the placing of our trust. We can't place trust where we have been repeatedly failed and exploited. We won't do that. That doesn't make sense. We have to place our trust after reflection. Now, the media has got tremendous capacity, to influence people. And the media, by and large, entertainment media, ordinary media, is very shallow. It does not have deep values. All the film that we see, all the cinema that we have, either violence or sex, right? It does not have deeper meaning. Question is, and there are aspects of media that I don't even dare to talk about. There are sites, pornographic sites and child abuse sites and so on that are there in the media also. Question is, how do we use media? Where do we place trust? We can place trust in the media that is responsible. But unfortunately, just as the wealth is distributed in the hands of a few people, media is also controlled by a few people. Even the news is controlled by a few people in every country. And I think that we have to use a lot of discrimination in placing unalloyed trust in the media. We have to use discrimination and critical judgment when we are dealing with the media. Those are the two values that are emphasized, two human values: discrimination and critical judgment.
Discrimination and critical judgment. Yeah. That's very good, sir, about talking about media and all that. And then people were also, either blaming the media, were saying that they had unnecessarily aggravated the effect of COVID. And there is a group of people who say that, oh, COVID is not that bad that I should take vaccination, or, I should protect myself and all that. So what is that human value that, we should learn from them, that if they talk, that they say that media is unnecessarily giving a hype to COVID?
Media did. There's no question about that. At least that's my view. I think that there was this, what do you call it, a theory, that tends to look at everything as if it is being contrived. Everything is being, the government is controlling. COVID is just an opportunity. It's been created by a few rich people to control the population. And the conspiracy theory. Conspiracy, right? Now, that is also in the media. There's a lot of people giving you very logical, very deep talks about how bad the governments are, and they are controlling, and they are going to control your liberty, and every country is going to become a police state. And please don't trust this, because it is going to play havoc with the DNA and change you from the human being into a subhuman species, right? So there is that too on the media. Question, again, I think, to my mind, the question is, what value do we place on our own judgment? How much do we place? How much of the trust we put in the hands of others? Because trusting means that we're accepting that view, and is becoming part of our mental equipment, our psyche. And I guess as a scientist, as a medical scientist, I resist anything unless it makes sense to me. And meaning, does it advance my self-care? Does it advance my happiness and my family's happiness? Does it advance me into becoming a better human being and thriving spiritually, or not? As far as I am concerned, all the hype that was there and the negative, inevitably with the media, because we were all concerned, we were looking at the deaths, how many people in the ICU, and how many people are dying, and how many people in the hospital, and what is happening, and the treatment is being given or not. That was part and parcel of our experience of pandemic. And that was multiplying our anxiety level and our, state of fear. No question of that.
Correct. So yeah, they were blaming it as if there's a conspiracy theory
Yeah.
behind this pandemic and all that. So a lot of good things have happened, and there are certain lot of bad things also happened during the COVID period. So what has happened is happened. But looking at the future, what are the human value lessons to the humanity for planning for the unpredictable changes that may impact our financial well-being at the individual level as well as national and global levels going forward?
I think we've touched on that already a little bit, but I think
Okay.
in terms of lessons from any adverse event, and I would say that COVID was a global adverse event which had lessons for whole of humanity. We can, when we are faced with adversity or trauma, we can live in the trauma, or we can rise above the trauma and learn the lesson that the trauma has taught us. When we rise above, we live in what is called post-traumatic resilience. We develop the capacities of handling similar situations in a better way, right? So the message to humanity, as far as I can see, is that we are interconnected. We are interdependent. We are one humanity. We are one people. There's a oneness principle that underlies all our human aspirations. We all want happiness. We all want well-being. We all want good nourishment. We all want to live in a state of joy and equilibrium. We all want to live in connected with our divine self. Question is, did this pandemic further that or not? And I would say at an individual level, it depends upon people. I'm talking about myself and Tessie, my wife. We had enormous opportunity of not running around the world trying to give workshops, but sitting at home and concentrating deeply on our purpose in life. And I think that we benefited a lot from the experience of pandemic and the isolation it caused. Yes, we missed family. Yes, we missed travel. Yes, we missed, the joy that we get in going to different science centers and talking to people and meeting people and seeing how things are and furthering Swami's mission. But at the same time, I think it added a depth dimension to us. At a national level, question is, have the politicians learned this lesson? I think to some extent, nations are becoming more aware of self-sufficiency because the supply chain can be interrupted at any time. And I think steps are being taken by most nations to at least create better medical facilities. At another level, at an international level, I think people are realizing that we could be better connected as one humanity. And that oneness principle is the subtext of our total experience. So my feeling is, yes, it has resulted in a lot of benefits if we are prepared to take a look at that.
Thank you, sir. Again, you brought the word oneness. It has taught us, that the oneness is very, very important and all that. But you had mentioned something before about Mother Nature. And Bhagavan has always emphasized connection with the Mother Nature. Is there any lesson about this through the experience of the pandemic?
Yes, I think, to me, the spirituality comes at a fine point in nature. Well, when I say nature, I mean the biological world, the spiritual world that is around us in which we live. There is a poet who has said, to be able to see the eternity in a grain of sand, to be able to see the hand of the divine in a leaf that is lying in the street, to be able to see the beauty and the perfection of an insect or an ant. These things are in nature. And I think what happened with pandemic, it enabled people to be alone in nature more. I know that many cities like Delhi, Bombay, even New York, the atmosphere cleared because people are not driving cars. And they could actually appreciate the greenery that was around them. They could appreciate people used to go for walks alone or together with family members in the gardens. They realized that they may not be able to have fresh vegetables, and many people started their own gardens to grow their own vegetables, right? And relate with the living prana shakti in the plants. And to be able to have that. I think that there were connection with the nature was enhanced through COVID in a lot of people. A lot of people. That's my understanding. But certainly, in my case, in our case, in my wife's case, we related more and more with the beauty and the perfection of nature.
So we became more closer to the nature, or we got an opportunity to be more closer to the nature.
I think people got, this is quite right. People got more an opportunity. Whether they took advantage of that or not is up to them. But there was the opportunity that was created to become closer to nature.
Beautifully, sir. So to sum it up, I would like to know from you, what action plans each one of us should take, always consciously applying the human values in our day-to-day life in any situation. We were talking about pandemic, but what are the action plans that each one of us should take in applying the human values for any situation in our day-to-day life?
When we say human values, we need to be very clear. Human values are only the operational aspect of divinity. That's it. The divine manifests, the unmanifest divine manifests as this nature, and the human beings interact through 5 human values, which is driven from their conscience, which is the voice of divinity. Right? Now, question is, how do we, as biological species, we are limited. We have got all these emotions and negative emotions to some extent, and subconscious mind, which is full of negativity from our evolutionary past, from the fact that we were inorganic matter, then we became organic matter, we were a snake, we were a tiger, we were whatever. Now we are human beings. Okay. So we have got in our being, and in fact, literally in the brain, there are 3 segments of the brain: the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the higher brain. Literally. Okay. So we've got all this aggression and negativity in part of the biological system that we are. We can't get away from it. But the way in which the brain is organized and the heart is organized is the lower brain can be utilized and made to function in a better way, informed by the next level of brain. And the highest brain, that is the human brain, is the prefrontal cortex, which has got the values, the planning, the thinking, the morality, the values, emotions, and so on, all linked up into a higher purpose, meaning and purpose. Okay. The question that you asked is, how do we live continuously informed by human values in day-to-day, moment-to-moment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So all this thing is locked up in us, and our spiritual challenge is to be able to overcome that. All the negativity that is there, which is locked up in us, is how to overcome that, how to amplify that into something glorious, how to turn negative emotions into positive. It's like, how do we use manure? It is smelly, but we can cultivate plants with it, and it will give us good tomatoes. Now, if I say, oh, manure is dirty and even smelling, I don't want to use it, I'll be depriving myself of good tomatoes also. So the negative emotions can be used to create something more glorious. And that is, if we take a look at the negative emotions as indicative of our state of being. Now, to cultivate positive emotions is our spiritual practice. And spiritual practice, in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, who says, the mind is restless and it's like the wind is everywhere. How do I control it? And Sri Krishna says, practice, abhyasa, abhyasa, abhyasa. Practice. So we need to be continuous on practice. Now, just because you're in practice doesn't mean that you won't fail. Failure is a lesson. If I fail to control my frustration in a situation, it is an indication that I have not really got mastery over my frustration. It's an indication, and that's how I should take it. Now, in order to cultivate our positive emotions and spirituality, we need to not only practice, we need to be very practical. And that is, have a fixed time, a fixed practice, fill ourselves in positive thought, this light, and also track ourselves. Many times people don't track themselves. They are doing the practice, but they're not tracking how they are succeeding. And for that, it is important to have a spiritual diary. A spiritual diary in which we put down our insights and also our failures and what we are doing about it and our action plans. So if we are really serious about our spirituality and we want to have that, freedom. I'm not going to talk about moksha. I'm going to talk about freedom even while we are living here. Freedom from the negative emotions, freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety, freedom from sadness, freedom from depression. Then we need to be able to track our progress and undertake practices where we are saying, okay, this time, this week, or this day, we can self-audit in the morning or evening or weekly or monthly, but daily audit. When I go to bed at night, do I review the day and see where did I fail, where did I succeed? And congratulate myself for succeeding and learn from the failures. Self-audit is the most important aspect of self-awareness. We cannot have self-awareness without continuous self-audit. That means self-regulation, regulating our thoughts, regulating our feelings, regulating our physical activities, regulating our spirituality.
Thank you so much, sir. The action plans you beautifully mentioned. What are the action plans to ensure that we apply the human values in day-to-day life? You said overcome negativity to positive feelings, and that can be done by spiritual practice. As I think you emphasized on, keep on practicing, and accept the failure. Failure is an invariable part of the practice, and take failure as a lesson. That's what you had mentioned.
Yes.
And you again, sorry.
I just wanted to say one thing. We talk about mantra. We recite Gayatri mantra, we recite Sai Gayatri and so on. We recite this mantra, and if we are visualizing the positive light that permeates us and then we are radiating, how authentic are we in having that light continuously present? So mantra means something, tra, protection. Man is mind. To protect your mind, to protect our mind against negativities is to be able to have that in the background. Even bhajans can be in your background all the time. If you're listening to enough bhajans, or at least that's the experience I have, or if you're listening to mantras, then the mantras begin to be there in the background of your mind all the time, and you can hook into it. At the first recognition of, say, anger or frustration, you can hook into it and not allow yourself to then justify. You see, anger is self-justifying. If somebody does something to you, you think again and again, and you amplify the the negativity in you. They amplify the, I should have said this, I should have done that, I didn't do this, We have continued to amplify it. I think the thing is to calm down, to accept that we have perhaps not succeeded, but it is a lesson in how we can conduct ourselves in the future.
Beautiful. You have mentioned a lot about action plans. Yeah, converting negativity to positivity, and then accepting the failure, and then taking failure as a lesson. And you also mentioned about mantra. That reminds me of another devotee in my area, where she always, keeps the Gayatri mantra on, and whenever you enter her house, you can always hear it. And one day, very frankly, she told me that actually by mistake she switched it off, but when she entered the house, she could hear the mantra being repeated. I don't know whether it is in the air or whatever it is. She said, oh, that mantra is always there, even if she switch it off. Yeah, these are the action plans, we could really undertake in order to apply the human values in our day-to-day life. And you answered my last question, which I wanted to ask you was, how do we judge ourselves? Whether we are implementing the action plans, and are they being successful, and if so, how effective are they? I think you mentioned two things. One is to keep a spiritual diary. That's a great lesson for me, at least in my personal thing. I think we have to maintain a spiritual diary, write down. I think you have mentioned very clearly, you have to write down every day, review it, and do a self audit. That's the scoring point you made, self audit. And it is self, because I wanted to ask you, can I check with somebody else whether I am consciously applying the human values in our day-to-day life? I think you put a very clearly, you answered, it is a self audit. I think we have to evaluate ourselves.
The self audit is both small s and capital S, self audit.
Oh, what's that? What's the difference?
Okay. Small s is, your ego, your identity, your who you are as a physical body. The large S is divinity.
Okay.
Yeah, the Atman, Brahman, not Atma, but Atman, it's what is, how accountable are we to our divine nature? Are we fully accountable to our divine nature?
Okay.
It's a relationship of how much reverence do I have for my higher nature, for divinity that is within me. So self-audit means not only reviewing the mistakes and the successes that you had, but also reviewing the relationship with divinity.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So
thank you, sir. I think you beautifully explained what is self-audit and how that's the action point, and that determines whether we are really improving or slipping down in our spiritual goal of applying the human values in our day-to-day life.
I will say one thing, Sainath. I think we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves.
Oh, okay.
When we say how we judge, judgment normally carries a very negative, heavy hand. We should not be judging ourselves. We should be assessing ourselves.
Okay.
Assessment is different from judgment. Judgment condemns us. People live, oh, I made a sin. I am bad. This is, unforgivable. How did I do? That kind of self-torture is not what spirituality is. To me, that is not, anyway. I think, to me, what I understand from Swami's teachings, we are divine, but we are forgetful, right? How do I become continuously aware? Okay, I failed. Yes, I failed, but I'm now resolved not to fail the next time.
Correct.
On self-acceptance. Self-acceptance. We are amazingly beautiful in what God has given us. the eyes, the ears, the head, the heart, the brain. These are like jewels in us. And we can meditate on the brain as a diamond, on the heart as a ruby, on the liver as a that sapphire.
Another gem. Yep.
Another gem. We can meditate on these. These are great gifts given to us. This life is a very, 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 very special opportunity. So we shouldn't condemn ourselves.
Okay.
So judgment does not lead to condemnation. Judgment should be tempered by understanding, and that is self-acceptance. We've been given this tremendous opportunity, and Swami, God himself incarnated. I mean, what else do we need? Yeah. He himself incarnated and came and gave us physical touch, sambhashan. He gave us all kinds of gifts he has left behind. So I think if we are grateful for that opportunity, He's given us good health. He's given us good brain to understand. He's given us this opportunity for us to be talking with each other and exploring, where we can take our mind and our heart. And these are beautiful opportunities for us. So I think
Swami has given an opportunity, and today you gave me an opportunity to discuss all this and share with all the people who are listening to this. Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. And certainly we would like to continue this. Today you have brought out how beautifully to recognize the inherent human values and how to bring it forth and apply it in day-to-day life. Thank you so much, sir. We'll continue with our next topic on some other subject on human values. Thank you so much, sir. I really love you. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for giving this opportunity to be able to talk with you and to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.